worth $50 million at the time, and we're talking how big of an individual he was back then.
Eazy-E was worth $50 million at the time that he passed.
1990.
But she wasn't the best choice because his kids, you know, they don't benefit from nothing that he's done, from none of the money
This
he
was my
made.
biggest, beef. Like, one, we weren't seeing royalty statements. Two, we go out on tour to do a bunch of shows, and how it works when you go on tour, the promoter sends.
I went to see him, and really more so just him kind of crying and me crying. So, you know what I mean? It was no more words. A couple of days later, they tell me he died.
In 1995, Eazy-E's disclosure shocked the world when he announced he had contracted AIDS, but what came after was even darker. He passed away after a month, and this sparked a brutal war over his estate. Millions were on the line.
She came after he passed away. That's when we met this woman.
How long was he married to her?
He wasn't married to her, bro.
His wife, Tomica Wright, took control, but many hip-hop fans questioned her new responsibility. Then came disturbing claims from Eazy's son about what his father said before dying. Was it really just illness that took him? Or was Eazy silenced, his legacy stolen before his body turned cold? Let's go back to where it all started. In early February 1995, Wright, better known to the world as Eazy-E, checked into Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, complaining of a persistent cough and difficulty breathing. At first, doctors diagnosed him with asthma, a condition he had reportedly dealt with on and off throughout his life. But within days, his diagnosis took a sharp and devastating turn.
His condition, he's in intensive care. We're not certain.
On March 16, 1995, barely a month after his hospitalization, Eazy-E released a public statement from his hospital bed. Through his attorney, Ron Sweeney, Eazy-E confirmed that he had been diagnosed with AIDS, not asthma. The statement, shared with outlets like MTV and the Los Angeles Times, revealed that he had contracted the virus through contact, stating, "I've learned in the last week that this thing is real and it doesn't discriminate. It affects everyone." Just 10 days after making this announcement, on March 26, 1995, Eazy-E was pronounced dead at Cedars-Sinai. He was 31 years old. What has puzzled fans, journalists, and even some family members ever since was the sheer speed of his decline. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, the progression from HIV infection to full-blown AIDS to death usually takes several years, especially when the patient is not already in a critical stage upon diagnosis. But Eazy's deterioration appeared to happen in less than a month, publicly at least. There were no photos, videos, or credible witness accounts showing him with severe wasting syndrome, opportunistic infections, or the other visible symptoms typically associated with late-stage AIDS. He was seen attending business meetings as late as December 1994 and was reportedly negotiating a movie deal with New Line Cinema shortly before his hospitalization. The official cause of death, as confirmed by Cedars-Sinai and listed on his death certificate, was complications from AIDS-induced pneumonia, but the compressed timeline from asthma to AIDS to death within a matter of weeks has led to decades of speculation and disbelief. While some experts have suggested that Eazy may have already had full-blown AIDS before being admitted to the hospital, there remains no publicly available medical record indicating when or how long he had been HIV positive prior to his diagnosis. To this day, the events of February to March 1995 remain one of the most debated and mysterious episodes in hip-hop history.
A couple of days later, they tell me he died.
How did you feel when they said that? I mean, did you know that he was gonna die when you
No.
saw the tubes? No? You thought he would just pull through?
No. Give me a second.
Years after the death of Eazy-E in 1995, his oldest son, Wright Jr., known publicly as Lil Eazy-E, began sharing his memories and feelings about his father's final days. Speaking in interviews with platforms like Vlad TV, Lil Eazy has described the emotional toll and confusion his family experienced during that time, especially around how limited their access was to the man they knew and loved. In one widely circulated interview clip, Lil Eazy emotionally recalled the moment he last saw his father. "I didn't see him after that day that I held his hand." According to Lil Eazy, once his father was admitted to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in early 1995 and diagnosed with AIDS, family access was tightly restricted. He stated that only a few individuals, including Eazy-E's attorney Ron Sweeney and then fiancée Tomica Woods, were permitted regular visitation. This restriction created emotional distance in Eazy-E's final moments, something Lil Eazy has said continues to trouble him and others in the family. While he has never made accusations or offered alternative explanations, explanations for his father's death, he has expressed ongoing sadness and confusion about how the situation was handled. Another verified fact is that Eazy-E married Tomica Woods on March 14, 1995, just 12 days before his death. Legal documents confirm that shortly after this marriage, she was granted control over Eazy-E's estate and Ruthless Records. These transitions, while documented and legally binding, have been the subject of public discussion due to their timing. Lil Eazy has not publicly challenged these outcomes, but has emphasized that his primary mission is to protect and promote his father's legacy through music, interviews, and public appearances. In all his statements, he remains respectful but reflective, often pointing out the emotional complexity of losing a parent under such restricted and accelerated circumstances. His accounts are not accusations, but they serve as a personal window into the family's grief and the unanswered emotional questions that still surround one of hip-hop's most sudden and shocking losses.
And what Yella told me with real confidence was that, yes, Eazy actually was fully conscious when he married Tomica. He wasn't like, no one grabbed his hand and wrote a fake signature or whatever.
On March 14, 1995, while hospitalized at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, Eric Eazy-E Wright married his longtime partner Tomica Wright, née Woods. The marriage occurred just 12 days before his death on March 26, 1995, from complications related to AIDS-induced pneumonia. Legal documents confirm that this union, finalized while Eazy-E was on his deathbed, granted Tomica full spousal rights, making her the legal heir to his estate. This estate included Ruthless Records, co-founded by Eazy-E in 1986, along with a variety of publishing rights, intellectual property, and other business assets tied to the label's revenue streams. According to court filings reviewed in probate proceedings and multiple news reports, for example, Los Angeles Times, Eazy-E did not leave behind a formal will prior to his death. As a result, under California state inheritance law, his spouse became the default administrator of his estate. Shortly after his passing, Tomica Wright assumed full ownership and operational control of Ruthless Records. At the time, Eazy-E had multiple children with different partners, including Eric Wright Jr., Lil Eazy-E. However, because the marriage to Tomica was legally recognized and no will was presented to challenge her inheritance, she was granted authority over decisions regarding Eazy-E's assets, catalog, and legacy. This transition of power created tension among family members, former collaborators, and business partners. While there were no major public legal disputes from the children contesting the estate at the time, several of Eazy-E's children would later speak in interviews about feeling excluded from decisions made after their father's death. Artists like BG Knockout and others have publicly voiced concerns about royalty payments and contract disputes following Eazy-E's death, though no formal legal action has been widely reported. Other artists from Eazy-E's circle have also cited lack of royalty payments, limited transparency, and changes in label direction as ongoing sources of conflict during Tomica Wright's leadership. By the late 1990s, Tomica had restructured Ruthless Records, moving its business operations under Sony Music's distribution wing, thus fully integrating the once independent label into the mainstream music industry. Though legally valid, the timing of the marriage and the swift transfer of power became a point of discussion in the hip-hop community. Eazy-E's empire, once built through independent hustle and street credibility, now sat under the control of a widow whose involvement in the label had not been public until his final days.
Straight Outta Compton comes out. You guys are not in it.
How could you do a Straight Outta Compton movie without JJ Fad? I just don't understand it. How you gonna do a movie when we opened the doors for Ruthless Records?
You know what I mean? He would come pick me up, like jump in when Tomica took over.
After Eazy-E's death in March 1995, his widow Tomica Wright officially assumed the role of CEO and owner of Ruthless Records. At just 26 years old, she took over one of the most influential independent hip-hop labels of the 1990s, a label that had launched the careers of NWA, Bone Thugs, and Harmony, JJ Fad, Mikael, and others. Tomica Wright's takeover was marked by a shift in both management style and strategic direction. Under her leadership, Ruthless Records entered a distribution deal with Epic Records, a division of Sony Music, allowing the label access to a broader market and corporate infrastructure. This move aligned the label with a more mainstream, commercially driven framework than the street-level independence it had originally embodied under Eazy-E.
When it was time for us to start getting paid our royalties and stuff like that, that's when we started noticing, like stuff wasn't adding up and stuff like that. But like I said, that all came from the contract that we signed earlier in the day.
This pivot sparked ongoing criticism from former Ruthless collaborators and longtime fans, members of Bone Thugs and Harmony. In interviews with Hip Hop DX and All Hip Hop, described struggles after Eazy-E's death, citing contract issues, unpaid royalties, and altered creative direction. Crazy Bone told All Hip Hop in 2003 that the problems began when Tomica took over, saying, "If Eazy were still alive, our careers in Ruthless would have taken a whole different direction, and that the group wasn't being marketed and promoted." Crazy noted in a 2003 All Hip Hop feature that they had to fight to get what we wanted under the new leadership. Other former Ruthless affiliated artists, such as BG Knockout, Dresta, and Cold 187 have also made public statements about being cut off or marginalized once Tomica took control. Several of them have pointed to changes in the label's priorities, including a reduced focus on hardcore West Coast rap and an increased emphasis on more broadly marketable acts. According to artist interviews and industry observers, the cultural image of Ruthless Records, once seen as a rebellious, grassroots-driven label with deep ties to Compton street culture, gradually became more corporate and less visible. By the early 2000s, Ruthless was operating quietly under the Sony umbrella, and many of its iconic artists had moved on or disbanded, while Tomica Wright continued to release albums under the Ruthless brand, including new material from Bone Thugs and Harmony. Some fans and former collaborators expressed that the label no longer reflected its original independent ethos. Critics and fans alike felt that the legacy of Eazy-E and his contributions to hip-hop's independent spirit were not being preserved in the way they expected. This shift sparked ongoing criticism from former collaborators and longtime fans, who saw a clear disconnect between the raw, street-driven foundation Eazy-E built and the more corporate direction Ruthless Records took under Tomica's leadership. To this day, Ruthless Records is remembered not only for its revolutionary past, but also for the growing pains and institutional changes that followed the loss of its founder.
He's worth $50 million at the time. We're talking how big of an individual he was back then.
Eazy-E was worth $50 million at the time that he passed.
1995.
When Eazy-E passed away on March 26, 1995, media reports at the time estimated his net worth to be between $8 million and $35 million. These estimates were based on his founding ownership of Ruthless Records, partial music publishing rights, and artist contracts with acts like Bone Thugs and Harmony, JJ Fad, and Above the Law. Ruthless Records had achieved significant commercial success in the early 1990s, with multi-platinum releases and distribution deals through Priority Records and Relativity Records.
Is that Eazy was lying on his deathbed, dying of AIDS, and he got married to Tomica on that deathbed.
Yes.
Signed the marriage certificate.
Following Eazy-E's death, his wife, Tomica Wright, legally assumed control of his estate and was appointed CEO of Ruthless Records. According to probate documents and court records, she became the primary decision-maker regarding Eazy-E's business holdings, including music catalogs and intellectual property, as there was no publicly filed will at the time. Under Tomica's leadership, Ruthless Records continued to release music in the years after Eazy-E's passing. Notable projects included albums from Bone Thugs and Harmony, though the label's influence in the broader music industry began to decline in the early 2000s as key artists departed or pursued deals elsewhere. In various interviews, artists formerly affiliated with Ruthless Records have voiced concerns about contract clarity, royalty payments, and changes in the label's direction. BG Knockout and Cold 187 among others, have publicly spoken about the impact of Eazy-E's death on their careers and relationships with the label. Members of Eazy-E's family also began to share their perspectives. His daughter Erin Bria Wright and son, Eric Wright Jr., Lil Eazy-E stated in public interviews that they had little involvement in decisions surrounding their father's legacy. Both have expressed a desire to participate more actively in preserving his memory and catalog, and have worked on creative projects honoring his contributions to hip-hop. There are no public records detailing a full breakdown of Eazy-E's assets and liabilities at the time of his death. Similarly, no official audit of Ruthless Records' financial performance under new leadership has been publicly released. Most legal matters related to the estate were handled privately and have not been disclosed in court filings accessible to the public. While Ruthless Records retains ownership of Eazy-E's back catalog and continues to operate under Tomica Wright, questions about the financial trajectory of the label after 1995 persist among fans and industry observers. What remains clear is that Eazy-E's business empire, once a symbol of independent power in hip-hop, entered a new and quieter phase after his passing, leaving his legacy to be interpreted, protected, and debated by those he left behind. Founded in 1986, Ruthless Records was established by Eric Eazy-E Wright in Compton, California, in partnership with Jerry Heller, a veteran music industry executive. The label was responsible for launching the careers of NWA, the DOC, Michelello, Bone Thugs, and Harmony, and others. It quickly became known as a pioneer in gangster rap and street-centered storytelling. After Eazy-E's death in 1995, ownership and management of the label transferred to his widow, Tomica Wright, as confirmed through court documentation and corporate filings. Under her leadership, Ruthless Records entered into a distribution agreement with Epic Records, a subsidiary of Sony Music, to continue operations and ensure wider reach for its remaining artists. However, by the late 1990s and early 2000s, Ruthless Records began to struggle with artist departures, legal disputes, and a changing hip-hop landscape. Several former Ruthless artists, including Dresta, Cold 187 Yum, and members of Bone Thugs and Harmony, voiced dissatisfaction with the direction the label had taken. They described it as more corporate, less artist-driven, and increasingly disconnected from the label's original identity. In particular, Bone Thugs and Harmony, one of Ruthless's most commercially successful groups, frequently cited difficulties with management and support under the new regime. Although the group released albums through Ruthless post-Eazy, including BTNH Resurrection, 2000, they later pursued deals with other labels, and members expressed frustration with how the label had evolved. Ruthless Records released fewer projects as time went on and stopped signing notable new acts. The brand, once known for disrupting the mainstream with raw, unfiltered voices from the streets, began to fade from relevance. By the 2010, Ruthless Records had transitioned into a legacy catalog brand, with most of its public presence tied to Eazy-E's back catalog or re-releases of earlier work. The label remained under Tomica Wright's control but operated with minimal artist output and limited cultural impact. Though still technically active, Ruthless Records has never recaptured the force, rebellion, or influence it had under Eazy-E's direct leadership. Its transformation from an independent street-certified powerhouse to a relatively dormant corporate entity marks one of the most dramatic shifts in hip-hop label history.
Right before he got sick and passed away, he had fired Jerry Heller and he brought all new people in to run his company because I guess he found out it was some underhanded, shady business going on up under his nose.
If you look at his situation where like all the women around him didn't have AIDS, it came really suddenly and just killed him like right away. He feels that there was some sort of foul play.
Since Eazy-E's death in March 1995, various conspiracy theories have circulated suggesting he was intentionally infected with HIV or targeted due to business rivalries.
The conspiracy theories of it. I think what really got all these things going was when Suge made the joke.
So if you shoot somebody, you go to jail forever. So the kids, you don't want to go to jail forever, right? So they got this new thing out there, people sell them all the time. They got this stuff they call, they get blood from somebody with AIDS, and then they shoot you with it. Oh, so
these theories gained momentum in the mid-2000s after cryptic remarks from figures like Suge Knight, who, during a 2003 Jimmy Kimmel Live appearance, joked about injecting people with AIDS. While interpreted by many as a reference to Eazy-E, Knight never directly made any accusations, and no evidence has ever surfaced to support such claims. Importantly, there was never a criminal investigation into Eazy-E's death. Cedars-Sinai Medical Center listed AIDS-induced pneumonia as the official cause, and his family and legal team publicly confirmed the diagnosis. No medical records or documents have suggested foul play or fabrication. The rapid progression of his illness remains a focal point for fan speculation. Eazy-E went from public appearances in the late 1994 to a hospital bed in early 1995, publicly disclosing his AIDS diagnosis on March 16th and passing away just 10 days later. According to his attorney Ron Sweeney, Eazy had only recently learned of the diagnosis, though medical experts affirm that HIV can remain undetected for years before rapidly advancing once AIDS develops. The timing of his marriage to Tomica Wright, the estate transition, and limited public details surrounding his final days have fueled suspicion not based on evidence, but on unanswered questions. While his death was officially ruled natural, the lack of transparency continues to stir debate and shape how fans view his legacy today. After Eazy-E's death on March 26, 1995, grief was quickly followed by division within his family. Eazy-E had at least 11 children from different relationships, many of them still young. With no publicly known will, California's intestate succession laws gave his widow, Tomica Wright, full legal control over his estate, including ruthless records, intellectual property, and licensing revenue. In the years that followed, Eazy-E's children, particularly Aaron Bria Wright, E.B. Wright, and Eric Wright Jr., Lil Eazy-E spoke out in interviews with Vlad TV and Hip Hop DX, claiming they were excluded from decision-making, denied financial access, and sidelined from preserving their father's legacy. Lil Eazy stated he hadn't received compensation from Ruthless Records, while Aaron shared that multiple siblings had tried and failed to engage with Tomica or the estate's representatives. In 2015, Aaron Bria Wright launched a crowdfunding campaign for a documentary titled A Ruthless Scandal, No More Lies, aimed at exploring unanswered questions surrounding her father's death and estate. Though it never saw a major release, the campaign generated wide media attention, including features in Butt, XXL, and The Guardian. No public legal action was taken by the children, but interviews reflect a lasting emotional divide. For many of Eazy-E's children, the pain of losing their father was compounded by their perceived disconnection from the legacy he left behind. While some have pursued careers honoring his memory, the estate and its decisions remain under Tomica's control, leaving the broader family on the outside. Eazy-E's impact on hip-hop was monumental. By co-founding Ruthless Records and launching NWA, he reshaped the music industry with raw authenticity and independence. He signed genre-defining acts like Bone Thugs and Harmony and owned his masters, an unheard-of move in the 1980s. After his death in 1995, however, control of his estate and label shifted. Artists raised concerns over royalties and his children claimed exclusion. The once rebellious label faded under corporate deals. Though his music lives on, Eazy-E's posthumous story reflects a larger caution. When empires are left without clear protection, legacy can fracture, leaving unresolved tension, missed opportunities, and unanswered questions. Eazy-E built an empire from the streets of Compton, transforming hip-hop forever. His bold vision and ownership mindset inspired artists to value independence. But after his death, chaos followed: legal disputes, family rifts, and controversy over estate control. Without a will or succession plan, those closest to him were sidelined. Despite the turbulence, his legacy continues to influence generations. His name echoes in documentaries, songs, and hip-hop history. But it's also a reminder of what's lost when legacy isn't protected. In life, Eazy-E broke boundaries. In death, his story remains tangled in conflict, memory, and the fight to be remembered right.